As a child, Ellie was captivated by astronomy and radio signals, spending hours at her radio connecting with people worldwide, meticulously tracking each call on a map. Her father, a constant source of support, often joined her in stargazing with a telescope. Ellie dreamt of contacting aliens, but sometimes wondered if her radio could also reach her deceased mother. Years later, Ellie, now a doctor, works for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, or SETI program, at the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico. Just like in her youth, she dedicates countless hours to listening for alien emissions. Her blind colleague Kent respects her dedication, noting that few people simply listen anymore. Ellie begins a new map, meticulously marking the sections of the galaxy she's surveyed. One day while having lunch, Ellie is approached by Palmer, who inquires about the observatory's work. He's writing a book on technology's impact on third world countries and attempts to gift her a small plastic compass, which she returns. Palmer flirts, and they arrange to meet on Tuesday. Soon after, the president's science advisor, David, arrives to review the research, clearly reluctant to be there. On Tuesday night at a party, David expounds on the necessity of scientific projects generating profit, citing taxpayer money. Ellie attempts to explain the importance of pure scientific research. Palmer comes to her defense, prompting David to address him as father. Ellie's mood sours, and she asks Palmer if he's a priest. He denies it, explaining he has a master's in divinity and now engages in secular humanitarian work, supported by third world churches. Despite her skepticism, Ellie leaves with him. They watch the stars, and she shares her astronomical knowledge, recounting how her father inspired her passion for astronomy. They share a kiss and spend the night together. Afterward, they engage in a philosophical discussion about God and science. Palmer expresses a strong belief in God, while Ellie insists there must be a logical explanation for everything. Palmer then asks about her childhood, learning her mother died during childbirth and her father when Ellie was 9. Ellie grows uncomfortable and announces she must leave for work, but not before telling Palmer to leave his phone number. On her way out, Ellie recalls the day her father died. She heard a noise, found him collapsed downstairs, and despite running to retrieve medicine from the upstairs bathroom, it was too late. At the funeral, a priest attributed his death to God's will, but Ellie disagreed, believing she should have kept medicine downstairs. She then ignored everyone and rushed to her radio, hoping to contact her father. In the present, Kent informs Ellie that David has shut down their project. A furious Ellie confronts David, who believes he's saving her career by ending her, quote, waste of time research. Ellie returns home, finds Palmer's number and the compass, but calls Kent instead. She announces her intention to find investors so their group can continue their research in New Mexico, leaving Palmer's number behind when she moves. 13 months later, after numerous unsuccessful meetings with other companies, Ellie presents her case to Haddon Industries. The board dismisses her ideas as science fiction. Ellie, exasperated, rants that all scientific discoveries were once considered science fiction. At that moment, the board receives a call from CEO Haddon himself, who agrees to fund her research. 4 years later, Ellie is still in New Mexico, working with massive satellite dishes. One afternoon, Kent brings bad news. The scientific community is pressuring them to present results. Haddon is willing to fund the project indefinitely, but the telescopes are government-owned, and the government intends to lease them to more profitable entities. The project is scheduled to shut down in 3 months. Ellie wants to fight, but Kent believes it's time to concede. Meanwhile, Palmer has published his book and become a spiritual counselor at the White House. He appears on TV, stating he's not anti-technology, but believes people have lost their way, obsessing over computers instead of finding life's meaning. Days pass, and Ellie continues to listen tirelessly. One evening, she's stunned to hear a pulsing noise. Overjoyed, she immediately calls her team, providing coordinates as she rushes back to the observatory. The team, equally excited, connects as many machines as possible and repositions the satellites for a stronger signal. They work collaboratively, tracking and recording, happily confirming the signal originates from outer space, specifically from the star Vega, 26 light-years away, meaning it has traveled for over 20 years. Suddenly, the transmission ceases, and Ellie is about to lose hope. But it fortunately restarts. Ellie realizes the pulses represent prime numbers, indicating a deliberate transmission, not random noise. After a brief argument, the team agrees to notify everyone. The next morning, the area is swarmed with reporters and national security advisors. The team confirms other stations have corroborated their discovery. But National Security Council leader Kitts is displeased they went public instead of keeping the information classified. This time, however, David defends Ellie, explaining that without other stations' help, they would have lost the signal. With Kent's assistance, they discover a second signal accompanying the first and connect it to a TV. The team manipulates the settings and finally decodes the signals into a video message, a recording of Hitler's opening speech at the Olympics. This was the first television transmission to reach space, and the aliens sent it back as a greeting. The White House panics, and the president announces alien contact, carefully avoiding mention of Hitler. Assuring reporters the message is benign. Ellie prepares to speak publicly, but David is designated as the leader of the investigation. Meanwhile, Kent continues analyzing the signal, realizing it has structure. They compile all the extra frames, not belonging to the Olympics video, and discover it translates into massive amounts of data. Soon, Ellie presents this data, and David announces the government will take over the decryption, prompting Ellie's protest, as this has always been her private work. White House official Rachel allows Ellie to retain control of the investigation, but all progress must be privately discussed with the government before any public announcement. Soon, media outlets worldwide are abuzz with the discovery. Neo-Nazi protesters fill the streets, while religious attendance rises. Health organizations express concern that mass self-deletion could become a major problem, as some cults have already begun to die. As the media debates science versus religion, thousands of people camp outside the New Mexico facility. Some pray, others merely observe, and many protest. Ellie is shocked to see a shady organization offering UFO abduction insurance. Most people are having fun, but she worries about a religious fanatic named Joseph, who continuously incites hate. 3 weeks after the discovery, Ellie finds an email from an unknown sender at home. The text reads, "Take me to your leader," to which Ellie replies, "Who are you?" A quick response arrives stating, "I've got a secret," and showing part of the alien message. Annoyed by a potential hacker, Ellie receives a phone call and fax for a special appointment. Moments later, a helicopter drops Ellie at the airport, and she boards a private plane to meet Haddon, the man who funded her research and sent the emails. He lives on the plane and considers Ellie one of his most valuable investments, which is why he researched her. Haddon plays a video summarizing Ellie's life and achievements, before revealing he was also an engineer, which is why he resents government and religion obstructing science. Haddon then announces he's deciphered the data and displays it on screen, showing it must be arranged in 3 dimensions to be understood. The next day, Ellie presents this discovery to the government, explaining the data contains blueprints for some kind of machine. Unable to determine the machine's purpose, an argument erupts over whether to build it, given its potential danger. The subject of God repeatedly arises. Ellie is shocked to see Palmer arrive, suggesting they find a middle ground. The argument is interrupted by the president's arrival, who listens to everyone. That night, a party is held to celebrate this progress, and many protesters, including Joseph, gather outside, urging scientists to get real jobs instead of wasting tax dollars. Ellie meets Palmer and they have another philosophical discussion. She explains her need for tangible proof, and Palmer asks her to prove she loved her father, leaving her speechless. At that moment, they are interrupted by breaking news. It has leaked on TV that the machine is a one-person spacecraft. An emergency meeting is held at the White House, and they agree to build the machine. The president will contact other nations to share the risk and cost. A selection committee is formed, including Palmer, to interview candidates for the journey. To Ellie's shock, David resigns as science advisor to become a candidate himself. Soon, media debates the project's cost and who is worthy of such a trip. Controversy surrounds the 10 final candidates, with 1/3 being American, and Japan not volunteering anyone in exchange for a systems integration subcontract. Ellie appears on TV, stating the traveler should understand the message's language, and that she believes the aliens would not send something non-functional, so it shouldn't be dangerous. This doesn't stop the top astronaut from withdrawing his candidacy when his scared children ask him who. Later, Ellie meets Palmer and explains that due to time dilation, the traveler will experience only 4 years in the ship, while 50 years will pass on Earth. She believes the sacrifice is worthwhile for such important answers, and they kiss again. On the day of candidate interviews, Ellie performs exceptionally well, and the committee is ready to conclude. However, Palmer interjects, questioning her atheism, which makes her look bad. Ultimately, David is chosen. That evening, Palmer visits Ellie, explaining he couldn't choose someone who believes most of the world is delusional. A tearful Ellie returns the compass and kicks him out. The machine is built at the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, drawing large crowds. Extensive testing is conducted, using a robot to detect any side effects for the passenger. On launch day, Ellie attends the event. David tells her he wished her idealism had been enough, but unfortunately, the world operates on profit. Ellie joins a team in the control room and excitedly watches as the spacecraft activates, its rings rotating as a form of accelerator. During final tests, Ellie notices Joseph, disguised as a worker near the ship. She immediately warns David, and everyone rushes to tackle Joseph, but it's too late. He detonates a bomb, and a massive explosion collapses the tower. As the crowd panics, falling debris destroys the ship and kills several workers, including David. Some debris flies off, but no one outside the ship area is hurt. Sometime later, authorities hold a funeral for the fallen, while news shows a goodbye video left by Joseph, in which he claimed his actions were for the good of mankind. When Ellie returns home, she finds some machines waiting in her room. She presses a key, and a video call begins, revealing Haddon in the Mir space station. He's living there because he's dying of cancer and wants to spend his final days in space. He zooms in on a camera in Hokkaido Island, surprising Ellie with a second ship built by Japan. The company with the contract is a subsidiary of Haddon's and built it in secret. Ellie immediately travels to Japan in Haddon's private plane and meets the team on a large ship. They teach her all she needs to know about the trip and share safety precautions, including a container of poison, a standard issue for astronauts for years, in case they get stuck floating in space after a ship failure. In the evening, Palmer visits Ellie and returns the compass, confessing he didn't vote for her because he didn't want to lose her. Soon, media announces a second machine, but no reporters are allowed at the site. On launch day, Ellie gets nervous seeing the rings rotate, but moves forward. Technicians connect her suit and attach a camera to her head to record the trip. Palmer uses his contacts to bring Kent in so he can give Ellie a good luck message before takeoff. The ship begins vibrating normally, but Ellie also notices a strange light. She tries recording it, but the footage is static. She theorizes it's an electromagnetic field and is shocked when the ship becomes transparent. The countdown begins, and the team is worried, especially when the ship starts glowing and all computer numbers are off limits. They consider aborting the mission, but Kent hears Ellie's voice through the static, swearing she's good to go. The sea around them churns violently, shaking the ship just before the spacecraft finally takes off. Ellie is amazed by the surrounding lights, which quickly transform into breathtaking celestial views. This soon becomes a tunnel, and Ellie theorizes it's a wormhole, describing the experience for the camera despite losing communication with ground control. After crossing what appears to be residual radiation, the ship stops, and Ellie sees Vega. Looking around reveals a peculiar contraption nearby, only for the ship to suddenly take off again. Ellie now flies through a series of wormholes, which have a strange effect on her face. Eventually, it stops at another star system, and Ellie notices a city on a planet. She barely sees anything else before the ship enters a much more violent wormhole, and the compass begins floating, prompting Ellie to leave her chair to catch it. At that moment, the chair breaks off and hits the ceiling before the lights go out. Ellie turns on her flashlight and discovers an unidentified celestial event. She's incredibly moved by its beauty and laments that a poet wasn't sent to describe it. Suddenly, she finds herself floating down onto a beach. This place is also beautiful and resembles a drawing she made as a child. Touching around, her hands meet resistance, indicating it's some form of energy or illusion. At that moment, a figure runs toward her, and Ellie is shocked to see her father. But upon hugging him, she realizes he isn't real. This is an alien who took this form to communicate more easily. He confirms the existence of many alien races and that humans initiated contact with the universe through their radio transmissions. The travel system Ellie used was not built by his people, but by an unknown entity. The aliens observed humans and deemed them worthy, sending them the blueprints as a first step for humanity to join the rest of the universe. After he says goodbye, Ellie watches a beautiful meteor shower appear in the sky. A light suddenly shines too brightly, and Ellie finds herself back in the ship, which is landing back in the Japanese Sea. The team panics and contacts Ellie, saying there was a malfunction and the ship never left. After Ellie is rescued, she shares her entire experience, but the camera only recorded static. She swears it's all true, but Kitts shows her a recording of the ship falling in seconds. The next day, the president gives a speech calling it a misstep. But soon, other nations are embroiled in legal disputes. The media is rife with criticism and conspiracy theories, especially when Kitts steps down from his advisor position. Afterward, a congressional committee led by Kitts interrogates Ellie, who suggests a wormhole could explain what happened. Time dilation could have made 1 second on Earth equal to 18 hours in space. Kitts immediately refutes her, stating wormholes are just a theory, and drops a bombshell. Haddon has died, and it's believed this entire endeavor was a hoax orchestrated by him. Ellie cries, begging people to believe her story, surprising herself by asking them to have faith since she has no evidence. Her speech about awe, humility, and hope inspires Palmer, but the committee concludes her story is also a hoax. On her way out, Palmer joins Ellie in front of cameras and a huge crowd, telling the world he believes her. Meanwhile, Rachel secretly tells Kitts that Ellie's camera recorded 18 hours of static. 18 months later, Ellie is working at a new base with extra radars, as SETI now has sufficient funding. Kitts visit the base on school trips, and Ellie teaches them they must seek their own answers.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe the channel. Let's meet with new video. Have a nice day.